Hi class, and welcome to week 11, lab 11 on the respiratory system. You guys are doing a great job. I know I always say that, but I really appreciate your effort doing these online labs. This lab will be very self-explanatory. You'll use the lab guide and as you're working through it, but the first couple parts you'll do on your own using lecture notes and other resources. So your respiratory system is responsible for introducing air into the lungs via inhalation. Your respiratory system allows for the exchange of oxygen with the circulatory system. It releases carbon dioxide, which will be a waste product of cellular respiration, which is the ability of your cells to take in glucose and create energy. And this exchange of gases happens at the interface between the lungs and the blood. The respiratory system is divided into your upper and lower respiratory tracts. The upper tract consists of your nose, nasal cavity, and pharynx, and the lower respiratory tract consists of your larynx, trachea, bronchi, and lungs. So you can see here the parts of the respiratory system are labeled between the upper and respiratory tract and lower respiratory tract. And within the lungs, we have respiratory bronchioles, which are separations of the trachea, bringing air into your lungs. And at the level of the alveolar ducts, we have the exchange of oxygen that's in these bronchioles. It will pass through these alveolar walls into the capillaries of your blood to go to your heart, where it will be transferred to the rest of the body. And then carbon dioxide will be unloaded into your lungs as a waste product from cellular respiration. And this carbon dioxide is what you exhale to get rid of. The diaphragm is one of the most important breathing muscles in the body. It sits right underneath the lungs. It helps to expand your rib cage as you breathe in and then decrease the rib cage as you breathe out. So the first part is a lot of just labeling and anatomy because this is kind of a human biology anatomy lab. So we have just some labeling of the different structures as shown here, and you can use the picture from above. You can use your notes. You can use any other resource to label these different structures in the respiratory system using this diagram below. So you can do that one on your own. And then you'll use this table to then describe the function of those anatomical structures. So try to use your own words to describe the functions of these different structures. So it gives you the structure, and then you need to just tell me if it's in the upper or the lower respiratory system. And again, you can use lecture notes, your textbook, other sources for that. We divide, again, your respiratory system into the upper half and the lower half. So you need to let me know which structure is in which part of the respiratory system, and then use your own words to describe its function. All right, so you kind of have a couple pages of describing the function of the structures. And then you need, just like how we traced the path of blood through the heart, we're going to trace the path of air through the respiratory system by listing the structures in order from the nose to the alveoli. So for example, we'll start with the nose. So I'm just going to start you off here a little bit. And if you're wondering what structures to use, you can use the structures that were listed above here. So basically all these structures that were listed above, intercostal muscles you don't have to use. But if you use maybe this picture, starting with the nose, the nasal cavity, the different parts of the pharynx, down the larynx, the trachea, the bronchioles, and then all the way to the alveoli, so how the bronchials split, you'll trace the path of air through those different structures. So let's say we start with the nose. We'll go to the nasal cavity, and then we'll go to the nasopharynx. It's the first part of the throat, or the first part of the pharynx, and you'll kind of continue on from there all the way to the alveoli. So be as detailed as you can, tracing that pathway of air. Then if we were in lab, we would be measuring lung capacity. And this is really important to measure how much air is being taken into your lungs and being taken out of your lungs. And the lungs, as the main organ of the body responsible for gas exchange, namely transfer of oxygen into your blood and transfer of carbon dioxide out of the body, it's very important to make sure our lungs are functioning and taking in the appropriate required amount of air so that our bodies are getting enough oxygen and they're getting rid of the carbon dioxide that they contain. So medical professionals have a way to measure the volume of air that's inspired and expired, inhaled and exhaled. And we divide or we describe the different quantities of air that are inhaled or exhaled using a chart that looks like this. And I'm going to go through and describe a couple of these lung functions, and then I'm going to take you through the lab guide where you can actually see this occurring. So this is called spirometry. And this is a spirometry chart measuring the amount of air in a normal breath. And this is very important for people with breathing problems, emphysema, cystic fibrosis. It can be used as a diagnostic tool. If the amount of air that you're breathing in is not where it should be, that could be a sign for concern. So it's a great diagnostic tool. It usually uses some sort of measuring device that goes over your mouth. You breathe in, you breathe out, and it's able to measure that air coming in and out. So the volume of air that enters or leaves the lungs during a single breath is known as tidal volume. And tidal volume is about 500 milliliters during resting conditions. However, the tidal volume is only a small portion of the amount of air that your lungs can actually take in. So tidal volume is labeled TV in this chart, and this is just normal volume of normal breathing at rest. So kind of what we're probably all doing right now. We're at rest, we're just breathing. Tidal volume, that's about 500 milliliters. Individuals with breathing problems may be given a vital capacity test, and this test identifies how much a person can move in and out air, a person can move in and out of their lungs. And in this test, the person is instructed to take a deep breath and then exhale out as hard as they can. And they use a spirometer, which is an instrument that can be used during this test to measure airflow and the volume of air that is moved into and out of the lungs. And we get kind of some measurements here. IRV stands for inspiration reserve volume. So this is the amount of volume that your lungs can take in if you take a really deep breath. Expiration reserve volume is the amount of air that you can exhale after normal breathing. We have vital capacity then. Vital capacity is IRV plus TV plus ERV. And then we have FRC and reserve volume. Functional residual capacity is the expiratory reserve volume plus residual volume. What you see at the bottom here, residual volume means the amount of air that's in your lungs at all times. So your lungs always will have some air in them that you can never breathe out. And that's important because it keeps your lungs inflated at all times. So you'll use a textbook or other resources to define these different terms. And then you'll use this spirogram above to determine the values that can be added to estimate total lung capacity. So total lung capacity is shown by adding them all up. You can add IRV plus TV plus FRC. You can find total lung capacity by adding up vital capacity plus RV. So there's different ways you can add up total lung capacity, but basically total lung capacity is all the air in the lungs, including the residual volume that exists at all times. So let's go and take a look at your lab because we'll be looking a little bit at spirometry now. These are used in lab to measure exhaled volumes. And we have some data here that your lab guide will help with. So the first couple pages in your lab guide, we'll go through those labeling. And then I think here, measuring lung capacity, there's a great video that describes what taking a spirometry test looks like. You're going to be blowing out through a device to, you won't be, but the video will show that. So look at that link. It's about a 3-minute video, and it will really help explain what spirometry is and how it's used to detect lung function. Measuring lung capacity, you'll then use the tables at the end of the lab document to determine your predicted vital capacity value. And you'll choose the correct table for a male or a female, and you'll calculate your height in centimeters. So you'll need to convert to inches first, and then you'll have to, so for example, I'm 5'8", so 5'8" would be 68 inches, and then you need to convert your height in inches to centimeters. You need to refer to your metric system lab, and basically, let's just look how many inches are in a centimeter. There's 0.39 inches in a centimeter, and if we go a little bit differently, how many centimeters are in an inch? I think it's 2.54. So what you'll do is you'll take your height in inches and you'll multiply by 2.54, and really easy. You can even use this here. I'm 5'8", which is 68 inches. So let's just put in 68 inches to centimeters, multiply by 2.54. So this is what you'll need to calculate your vital capacity. You'll have to change your height into inches, multiply that by 2.54 to get your height in centimeters. And then find the value for your height and age. So for example, a 46-year-old female who is 5'8", which is 172 centimeters, would have a predictive vital capacity of 2960 milliliters per cubic centimeter of air. So for example, let's take a look at this chart and what it means. So at the end of your lab, you have these charts that give you your vital capacity. And these are a little bit hard to read. You can probably also find ones online. You're going to kind of have to move your head over. So I am much older than you guys. I'm 34. So you go down to the age 34. You guys are probably in the 18, 20, 22 range. But for me, I'm 34. And then you go over to your height in centimeters. So again, I'm going to keep my cursor at the 34 line mark so I can remember that. And then I'm going to go to 172 centimeters. So my vital capacity where my cursor is, if you can see that, is 3,165. So you use the chart at the top to find your height in centimeters, and then you go down to find your age. So that's the chart for females, and then there's a chart for males. So you need to get your vital capacity to do this first. So in this section, part A, spirometry, that's where you'll put your predicted vital capacity. And you'll put that here. You'll use the tables from the end of the lab, take your age, and then take your height, convert it to centimeters to put your predicted vital capacity. Then for tidal volume and vital capacity, let's go back to our lab guide to see how we get that. So you'll use the following data to complete page 6 of that worksheet. We can get our own vital capacity from the tables at the end of the worksheet. And for tidal volume and vital capacity, use this data. This is data from your instructor or the woman who made these labs for you, and we can use these data. So you'll want to put tidal volume is 450, which is pretty normal. It's a little low, and then vital capacity is there. So you'll need to put those in to the worksheet where it says total tidal volume and vital capacity. So your predicted vital capacities will be different for each person. If you're working in a group, you can do it from one person, and then the tidal volume and vital capacity we give you in the lab guide. And then you'll calculate the total minute volume, where you take the ventilation rate times your tidal volume. So you'll measure your resting ventilation rate, which is the number of breaths for 1 minute. And then you'll multiply that by the tidal volume, which is what we give you in the lab guide. You'll record your data in the table provided, and ventilation rate is the number of breaths per 1 minute. So in and out is 1 breath. So that's 1 breath, and you'll count that for 1 minute. You'll march briskly in place for 3 minutes. You'll obtain a new tidal volume measurement using the spirometry as you did in part A, and you'll measure your ventilation rate per minute. So you're always going to have the same tidal volume, but you're going to change your ventilation rate to get your total minute volume, and you'll calculate your post-exercise total minute volume using the formula provided above. So resting, you'll get your ventilations per minute, and let's go back to the lab guide to take us through this as well. You'll do exercise to measure your respiratory rate. For data for page 7, for us, anyone who is unable to complete the physical activity, we give you some data that you can use that can plug into that chart as well. So ventilations per minute is 12. And again, a ventilation is an in and an out, and that's 1 ventilation. And you can count in and out breaths, in and out 1, in and out 2. You can count, put your timer on for 15 seconds, and then multiply by 4 to get ventilations per minute. Ventilations per minute post-exercise, you'll notice you breathe more after you're exercising, and tidal volume resting and tidal volume post-exercise. So you can use this data as you fill out that worksheet too, and then you'll calculate the total minute volume. You'll then use the data provided and collected as well as other resources to answer the questions on page 7, and that kind of gets us through the end of the lab. List the stages of ventilation, which you can refer to your notes as necessary. So stages of ventilation meaning inhaling and exhaling. And based on the information, what are the 3 most significant factors that determine your vital capacity, and why do you think these factors are important? And which value causes total minute volume to increase during exercise? Probably the number of breaths that you take. And that's it for this lab on respiratory system. Like usual, let me know if you guys have any questions, and keep up the good work. Be sure to complete the quiz from last week's lab. I'll try to have that open by tomorrow. And take care, guys. I hope you're all doing well.